happens when the world you wake up in is identical to the one you fell asleep in, except for one detail that proves reality is not as solid as you once believed. The alarm clock on the nightstand read 6:47 a.m. The pale gray light of a winter morning filtered through the gap in the curtains, casting a familiar rectangular shadow across the bedroom wall. Jennifer reached out and silenced the alarm with a practiced motion, her hand finding the snooze button without needing to look. She had performed this ritual thousands of times. Rooms smelled the same, the faint scent of lavender from the dryer sheets she used, mixed with the lingering trace of the coffee she had brewed the previous evening. Everything was in its proper place. The water glass on the nightstand, the book she had been reading face down on the carpet, the pair of slippers aligned neatly at the foot of the bed. It was a morning like any other. Jennifer worked as a graphic designer for a mid-sized marketing firm, a job that allowed her to work from home 3 days a week. Her life was structured, orderly, and predictable. She had a small but comfortable apartment in a quiet neighborhood, a cat named Oliver, who was perpetually indifferent to her existence, and a routine that provided a comforting sense of control. She liked the order of things. She liked knowing that the coffee maker would be full at 7:15, that her emails would be waiting at 8:00, and that Oliver would meow for his breakfast at precisely 8:30. This predictability was not a limitation to Jennifer. It was the framework within which she operated, the steady rhythm that allowed her to focus on her creative work without distraction. First indication that something was wrong came when she walked into the kitchen. The coffee maker was empty. Not just empty, but clean, as if it had never been used. The filter basket was dry, the carafe was spotless and sitting upside down on the drying rack, and there were no coffee grounds in the trash. Jennifer stood still for a moment, processing the sight. She distinctly remembered brewing a pot of coffee the night before, a rare indulgence to keep her awake while she finished a design project. She had poured herself a cup, set the carafe back on the warming plate, and then gone to bed. The carafe had been half full. Now it was pristine. She checked the trash. No used filter. No coffee grounds. It was as if the previous evening had simply been erased. A cold trickle of unease settled in her stomach. She dismissed it as exhaustion or the lingering effects of a strange dream. People misremember things all the time. It was probably just a sign she needed more sleep. She made a fresh pot and continued with her morning. She took her shower, dressed in her usual comfortable clothes, and sat down at her desk. She opened her laptop, and the screen glowed to life, displaying her desktop background, a photograph she had taken of a beach on a vacation she had taken 5 years prior. It was her favorite picture, the vibrant blues of the ocean, the pale gold of the sand, and a single seagull captured mid-flight. She smiled at the familiar image and opened her email. That was when she noticed it. Email from her client, the one she had been working on until almost midnight, was gone. Not marked as read, not archived. It was simply absent from her inbox, her sent folder, her trash folder. She checked her archived messages. Nothing. The entire email chain, containing detailed feedback and crucial design specifications, had vanished from her computer, the server, and seemingly from existence. Jennifer refreshed her browser, a spike of panic flaring in her chest. She checked her project management software. The project was still listed, but the folder containing all her work was empty. The files, the drafts, the assets she had painstakingly curated over the past 2 weeks were all gone. It was not a simple deletion. It was a void where something had been. She spent the next hour in a state of escalating anxiety, trying to find any trace of her work. She contacted the IT department, who ran diagnostics, and found no evidence of data loss or corruption. They They suggested she must have accidentally saved the files to a different location. She checked every folder, every external drive, every cloud account. Nothing. The documents were gone. Oliver meowed at 8:30, as if on cue, and Jennifer mechanically got up to feed him. He opened the pantry door and froze. The bag of cat food was on the top shelf, exactly where she had left it. But it was full. Not just a little bit full, but completely full, as if the bag had been replaced. She remembered buying that bag 3 weeks ago. She remembered the weight of it, the struggle to lift it into the cart. She had been using it every day. The bag should have been more than half empty. Yet, it was sealed, heavy, and undeniably full. Jennifer began to feel a profound sense of unreality. She was inside her own apartment, but it felt like she was walking through a replica. The furniture was the same. The artwork on the walls was the same. But the history, the small marks and imperfections that made a space lived in, were gone. The scratch on the coffee table from a dropped mug was smooth, polished wood. The stain on the carpet from a spilled glass of wine was absent. The trash can was empty, not because it had been emptied, but because the trash had never been generated. The kitchen was too clean, the surfaces too pristine. It was a perfect reproduction, a stage set, but the wear and tear of her actual life had been stripped away. He tried to call her mother. The phone rang, and a familiar voice answered. It was her mother's voice, but the words were different. Her mother had a habit of repeating questions, a small quirk Jennifer had always found endearing. But when she asked about her weekend, her mother responded with a story Jennifer had never heard, involving a dinner party and a neighbor Jennifer had never met. She described it with the same cadence and warmth, but the details were wrong. The memory was false. Jennifer ended the call, her hands shaking. She felt the floor shift beneath her feet, a sensation that had nothing to do with the physical stability of her building, and everything to do with the crumbling of her internal reality. The turning point came when she decided to leave the apartment. She needed fresh air, a moment of normalcy to ground herself. She grabbed her keys and opened the front door. The hallway was the same, the scuffed linoleum floor, the beige walls, the faded welcome mat. She walked to the elevator and pressed the button. When the doors slid open, she stepped inside and turned to press the button for the ground floor. The panel was different. It was missing a button. The button for the third floor, which she used every single day, was gone. In its place was a smooth, featureless surface, as if it had never existed. But Jennifer lived on the third floor. She had lived on the third floor for 6 years. She stepped back out of the elevator and walked to the stairwell, a cold dread pooling in her chest. The door to the third floor stairwell was gone. In its place was a solid wall, painted the same beige as the rest of the hallway. Jennifer was not in her apartment building. She was in a building that was physically identical, but fundamentally different. She walked back inside, her mind racing to find a logical explanation. A gas leak, a hallucination, a stroke. She searched her memories for something, anything, that would explain the inconsistencies. She reviewed the events of the previous day with surgical precision. The shower she had taken, the emails she had sent, the coffee she had drunk. The coffee she had brewed to stay awake and finish her design project. She had been tired. She had been working late. She remembered feeling a wave of dizziness as she finished her project. She had gone to bed, her head spinning. She sat down on the couch, her eyes fixed on Oliver, who was sitting on the armrest, his gaze fixed on her with an unsettling intensity. She had a sudden, sharp memory of something she had dismissed as a dream, a bright light, a strange humming sound, and a sensation of falling. She had woken up feeling disoriented, with a faint, unusual taste in her mouth. She had attributed it to a bad dream. Now, as she stared at the immaculate apartment, the full coffee bag, and the absence of the third floor, she began to understand. She had died, or nearly died, in her sleep the night before. The dizziness, the bright light, the falling sensation. It was not a dream. It was an ending. And this apartment, with its missing memories and its closed-off hallway, was the construct she had woken up in. This was not a glitch. It was a replacement. Walked to the bathroom and stared into the mirror. It was her face, but it was not. The eyes were the same, the hair was the same, but the faint wrinkle she had developed between her brows from years of frowning at her computer screen was gone. The small mole she had on her left cheek was absent. She looked younger, or rather, she looked like a version of herself that had been restored to a default state. The universe, or whatever force had created this place, had not copied the data from her life correctly. It had the shell, the framework, but the details were flawed. The coffee had been reset. The files had been wiped. The cat food had been replenished. And the floor she had lived on for 6 years was inaccessible, as if the program running her existence had simply omitted a crucial line of code. He searched her phone for contacts, numbers, memories of the outside world. Her photos were all there, but the metadata was wrong. The dates were scrambled, the location tags were inaccurate. She tried to access social media and found that her account existed, but her profile picture was a version of herself from 5 years ago. Her posts were a jumble of events that had never happened and missing milestones that should have been there. The world outside the apartment was like a painting, where the perspective was slightly off, the colors a little too saturated to be real. She knew, with a chilling certainty, that she could not go outside and expect to find her world. The elevator panel was proof enough of that. Jennifer had always believed in the solidity of reality, in the unassailable fact of her existence. She had been a practical person, someone who had never given much thought to the nature of consciousness or the possibility of parallel realities. She had assumed that the world was the world, and she was in it, and that was the end of it. But now, sitting in a flawless replica of her apartment, the air crisp and clean, she was forced to confront a terrifying truth. She was not where she was supposed to be. It was in a facsimile, a repair job performed by an indifferent cosmic engineer after system failure. She did not know if the original Jennifer had died, or if they had simply swapped places. She did not know if she was a copy, a ghost, or the same person in a different instance of the simulation. She only knew that her existence was a fragile construct, and the evidence of that fragility was all around her. What would you do if you suddenly realized the world you knew was a replica? How would you even begin to prove it, or find a way back?